Let's talk about another team that couldn't stay long inside the top 10 till they ran into something called Texas and Tuscaloosa, and it looked like it was going to happen again when number 11 Alabama hosted number 17 Tennessee. But the Tide, like Thanos, is inevitable. They win this game 34-20, but it certainly didn't look like they were going to do it at the start. Like at the first half, I was going, where was this Tennessee team against Florida? This is the Tennessee team that I thought I was going to see from the jump. And you know what? I don't know that they played a better first quarter with Joe Milton as the quarterback. Milton completed his first 9 passes. He was 10 of 13 for 112 and a TD in the first quarter alone. And they had a 13-0 lead by the end of the first quarter. By the end of the first half, Tennessee had put up 275 total yards. I mean, at one point, they ran 29 offensive plays in one quarter of football and forced a turnover on defense. It looked for all the world like Tennessee was going to be the first team to double up Nick Saban in back-to-back seasons since Ole Miss 2014-2015, and an accomplishment that they had done 20 years ago, 2003 and 2004, against Alabama. But the second half was so terribly different from the first for both of these teams. At halftime, we're looking at UT leading Alabama in Tuscaloosa 20-7. And then the third quarter, a different football team for both sides came out to play some ball. Milton, who went 16 of 22 for 175 with 2 TDs in the first half, could not get his team back into the end zone. A UT rushing attack that had over 100 yards at the half couldn't move the football. And then Alabama with Jalen Milroe, who couldn't get out of his own way in the first half, absolutely starts putting together drives. Alabama outscored Tennessee 27-0 in the second half alone. Nick Saban walked into the post-game press conference and said, well, the second half was a lot of fun, guys, obviously. It was a lot of fun. Yes, it was. If you're a Bama fan, you got to smoke your cigar this time, but I thought it was really interesting to watch how the drives played out for each one of these teams in the second half. Tennessee's first 5 drives in the second half resulted in 4 punts and a turnover. The Tide's first 4 drives in the second half, 2 TDs and 2 field goals made. Will Reichert extends his lead as the SEC's all-time leading scorer. Nick Saban, with a competent kicker, is dangerous. We've said this for years. Seems like if you got the kicker, everything else is going to find its way. Alabama coming back from a 14-point deficit, down 14. That also got my attention because I'm going, haven't they done this more than once? And it turns out they had. They are 3-1 this year when trailing at halftime against anybody. The one is Texas. You know who else gets on my nerves because they trail at halftime against teams they're supposed to be beating? Georgia. So is Alabama just Georgia in different clothes? I think so. At this point, I think Alabama and Georgia are going to make the SEC championship game. And if Georgia's undefeated and Alabama beats them, probably going to see those two teams get at least a wink and a nod, as they have in years past, to the college football playoff, because I don't really see anything between them at this point. Georgia's not as dominant as it was in 2022 by a stretch. I don't know that it's as good as it was in 2021. But Alabama, I think with the one loss, has everybody seeing them pretty clearly. As opposed to, I don't know, man, they feel like paper tigers. They feel like somebody somewhere is going to trip them up. And if the Tennessee team that showed up in the first quarter against Alabama shows up against Georgia, maybe Tennessee is the one to try to get that win against them. Right now, I don't see a difference right now, right? Which is another way of saying between Georgia at 1 in the AP and Alabama at 11 in the AP, we got about 11 to even 12 teams here that we could see in the college football playoff. I don't think all those teams are capable of winning the national championship, but you get my point here. Point is simple. Alabama is not as bad as we think, and Georgia is not as good as we think. That ought to terrify Georgia because nobody's terrified of you. You know, I know Brock Bowers had the tightrope surgery, and I hope he's back earlier than he's supposed to be, I should say. But I don't look at that team outside of him and feel terror. Malachi Starks is a dude, right? But so is Caleb Downs. I just look at an Alabama team that I think can match up. And I think as they continue to play football games, they're going to build more confidence. So is Jalen Milroe, for that matter. And Jalen Milroe is operating at the level that I know he's capable. Yeah, Alabama could win the SEC title game, which is another way of saying Alabama could win the national championship. And it's all there for them to play. For Tennessee, it's tough because that's 2 losses in the conference, 1 against Florida, 1 against Alabama. Right now, it feels like you're playing for a New Year's Six Bowl spot, playing to be the second best team in the SEC East right now. But That's even going to be tough given what the SEC East has been, and especially what Missouri was doing. I looked at Missouri was up 24-3 against South Carolina, and my first thought was, I hope Shane Beamer doesn't kick anything. But Tennessee going to be there, I think, at the end to try to play spoiler. Alabama continuing to build, continuing to get this thing right, continuing to look like a Nick Saban football team, and that's bad news for everybody in the SEC West. They got left to play, notably LSU.
If you like what you've seen, consider subscribing to the #1 college football show on YouTube, the Fox Sports app, or wherever you get your podcast.